Hey everyone, so experimenting today with a new series on the channel, which I'm calling In Focus. And this is something I might do monthly, bi-monthly, we'll see how it goes. But wanted to start this just as a way to give people in the photography community a bit of a platform for their work, for their projects, for things they're making, tools, creations. And I figured I would kick it off today with this very intriguing compact film processor from a company called Vintage Visual. They reached out to me recently. So I'm going to do a bit of a mini review, develop a roll of film, run you through what this is, and share my thoughts. So the AGO processor, as you can see, this is a very compact tool for developing film at home. The goal of just like simplifying the process, making it easier. This is being put together by a team in Estonia, currently funding right now, has been funded as of this video. There's like 2 weeks left and they're already past their mark, but there still is time to pick one up. I think it's like 275 pounds just for the processor and then some different packages as well. And I will say, I'm not sponsored by them. This isn't a paid video. I get nothing if you actually pick one of these up. So I just thought it was a cool product that some people might be interested in. Really quick rundown. So this uses standard Patterson tanks. They press on here and seal, and then the machine runs horizontally. And this does continuous agitation, has a built-in motor, so similar to a Jobo CPE, just with the agitation. And it does have a form of temperature control. It doesn't actually heat the chemicals, but there's a very interesting approach to this. Okay, so a couple features I want to dive into that make this unique. The first, as mentioned, is continuous agitation. This isn't specifically unique to the AGO, but it is a very nice feature. It's one of the things I love about the Jobo CPE I use. And that's because first, just uses less chemicals. So I think for a 2-reel tank, like this Patterson, uses 325 millichemical, maybe a little bit more than the Jobo CPE, but less than if you were just doing agitations by hand. I think this tank takes 500 mil. And then it's just way more hands-off. So for example, if you're doing black and white development, say you have like a 10-minute developer stage, it's nice to just set this, let it do its thing, and then you don't have to sit there every minute agitating by hand. So that is one of my favorite features of this. And then as mentioned, this uses standard Patterson tanks. According to Vintage Visual, who makes this, they say you can use all the way up to one of the 8-reel tanks. So obviously being able to process that much film at once with more efficient chemical usage is something that's very appealing. But also, just the size of this. So this is battery powered, obviously very compact as well. So I could see the appeal if you're someone who doesn't have a lot of space and you have to kind of set up every time you want to develop. Just having a little tool like this is obviously way more space efficient compared to a big Jobo unit where you need like a dedicated area for that. But by far, the most interesting feature on the AGO is just their approach to temperature control. So as mentioned, this doesn't actually heat the chemicals, but what they've done is added this temperature sensor here, which is constantly monitoring the temperature of the chemicals. And then it works kind of hand in hand with an onboard temperature time compensation system to adjust your development time on the fly, depending on the temperature of the chemicals. So I absolutely love this idea. All right, time to dive into how this works. So I developed one roll of film here, a roll of 120 FP4 black and white. Color is what would interest me the most with this, but I just didn't want to mix up an entire batch of color chemicals for one roll, which would then sit because I don't have any film I've shot at the moment here. But how this works is, first off, you take your Patterson tank. Just to note, you also need to drill out your funnel for the Patterson tank. And this kit comes with a guide, so you can do that yourself. But you attach it to the tank by just pressing it on with the holes down. And there's a gasket at the bottom that makes a nice seal. From there you go and you pick your brand and the program setting. I'm using Ilford DDX for this. And then you can go in and modify your settings. And I took 15% off the development time because of the continuous agitation. And then I went and changed my fix to 3 minutes and my final rinse to 5. And then next you want to go and you want to mix up your chemicals, get them to temperature. With DDX, that's usually 20 degrees on the mark, but I specifically went out of my way just to be like a little lazy in my approach so we could be off and we could see how that time compensation worked. Next up, pour in the developer and you go ahead and hit start on the first cycle and then wait. And then what was interesting is right away the temperature monitor showed me the chemicals were at 22 degrees. And within about 5 or 10 seconds, it made an adjustment to the developing time, dropping it by I think about a minute and then eventually went to about 55 seconds was the total time took off, landed around 21 degrees. I would love to see a little more specifics, not just 1 degree increments, because I'm sure it's obviously reading it a little more detailed than that. And then you simply repeat these steps for the next stages, pour out the chemicals, add the new ones, go to the next stage and hit start again. And then when all the cycles were done, I just took the tank over to my sink, stood it up on end, let the continuous agitation run, and rinsed for about 5 minutes. So very, very straightforward process. So my thoughts after using this, obviously I just did the one roll, but I could quickly see the value and the appeal of this. Obviously the continuous agitation's great, but that temperature control was fascinating just to see, putting the chemicals in a little hot, it changing my developing time, and then also just seeing the temperature drop a little bit during that developing phase and the AGO adjust again. So obviously for color, this is going to be very appealing, and there's going to be some people out there who are adamant they want to stick at 38 the entire time. But in theory, according to the manufacturer specs with some developers, I think it can be between 30 and 38 for color. So you could just mix up your chemicals, get them to like 35 or ballpark them, put it on here and just let the AGO do the rest. So definitely an intriguing and I think appealing feature for a lot of people. Okay, so I was doing the edit and I had originally a dislike section. That was yesterday. That's why there's the change in scenery. And the thing that I talked about was just pouring the chemicals out and how I struggled to kind of get a clean pour. You probably saw in the developing footage, it kind of went everywhere. And that's because my thought was to pour it out the front here using this curved lip and the edge of the processor. That obviously didn't work well at all. So originally I said I'd like to see this refined a little bit more. And then I was thinking last night, why wouldn't I just kind of flip it over and pour it out of the Paterson tank like you normally would, which is always a clean pour into the graduates. And I did that and it worked just fine. So wanted to reshoot this just to clarify, and also just because when I was using this in the footage, it looked pretty bad. But if you just use it properly, part of the Paterson, works just fine. Okay, so to close this out, overall, I really enjoyed this. Obviously, when it comes to film developing at home, there's so many different ways you can approach this, and you don't need tools that bring automation like this or a Jobo CPE. You can keep it very simple and just use something like a Paterson tank and do, manual agitations by hand and use something like a water bath. But if you do have the budget and you are looking for something that brings a little more convenience, consistency, I think this is a really cool addition to the market and a nice option to have there. Obviously, love how compact it is, but just that temperature and time compensation, I think, is genius and would bring like a lot of confidence when you're developing at home, especially with something like color film. So for me, I'm going to go ahead and still keep my Jobo CPE. I have a permanent space for it. I love that it's all in one and has the water bath for heating up the chemicals. But this is a really cool option and one I think is worth checking out if you're in the market for some sort of tool to maybe simplify your process at home. So anyways, hope you enjoyed this one. Also, hit me up if you have anything you're working on. I'll be looking for some things to feature in the future here for this In Focus series. Other than that, thank you for watching. We'll talk to you soon.